Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming. Today's presentation is just going to be a brief overview of kind of our experience, what it's like to live in residence. Everybody on our panel today has lived in residence. A little bit about myself. My name is Corey Flynn. I'm the Associate Director of Student Services and Residence Life. And I actually lived in St. Thomas Residence for 6 years as a student here at both St. Thomas and UNB. And I could say it's one of the greatest experiences of my life, and that's why we talk a little bit about residence being a very unique experience, and hopefully we get that message across to you today. I also want to introduce our other panelists, or I will get them to introduce themselves actually and tell us a little bit about themselves. So let's start with Selena.
Thanks, Corey. Hello, everyone. So I am Selena. I am the Residence Administration Supervisor here for Residence Life at STU. Pretty much, I lived in residence in my first year. And even though I didn't live in residence for 6 years at Corey, I lived for just 1 year, but I missed it so much that I came back to work for the Residence Life office. But yeah, pretty much about my role, I basically do the residence applications, room placements, and stuff like that. So pass it on to Jeremy.
Hey, everybody. Good morning. My name is Jeremy Fowler. I'm one of the resident supervisors here, or I guess the other resident supervisor. Yeah, a little bit about me. When I was at St. Thomas as a student, I also didn't live in residence as long as Corey. I only lived in residence for 5 years. I loved it so much. It had such a great impact on my experience as a student, and I was very excited to come back and join the Residence Life team. A little bit about my position is I work closely with our residence advisors, along with the house committees who are, they're basically two groups of student leaders within the residence building. Who are there to help build community and ensure safety, and I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about that. But speaking of residence advisors, I'll pass it over to Elise, who is a current residence advisor.
Hello, I'm Elise. I'm a third year student from Trinidad and Tobago. And yeah, I am a residence advisor at Vanier. And last year I lived in Holy Cross. Happy to be here.
Thank you, Elise. And this morning, we're going to give you kind of thoughts and our experiences of living in residence. So I wanted to give Elise first chance to kind of give us kind of an overview of how her time in STU residence has been, and talk a little bit about her experiences.
Yep, thank you. So I chose to live in residence last year because I kind of wanted a landing pad to adjust to university life. I was coming from online university in my first year. I didn't know what it was going to be like in terms of schedule, and I didn't know how that was going to impact my lifestyle. So I wanted the safety net of not being far from where I lived. For example, if I overslept, if I forgot a book that I needed, and even adjusting to the weather. I found that sometimes being an international student, I wouldn't know what to wear outside, quite frankly, and I would go outside and I would turn right back inside and go and change because it was not warm enough. So I really wanted that. That was something that was on my mind as I registered for STU, and I lived 1 year in Holy Cross, and I decided to come back to residence because I did have such a good time. It was one of the best decisions I made living on campus, and I stayed mainly for two reasons, I think, because I really found a community of people that cared about me, and the people that I cared about, a mix of international students and Canadian students, people from in the province and out of province. We really all just blended really well together, and it made me feel safe. It made me feel comfortable, and I never felt invisible. I felt that there was always somebody looking out for me. At the end of the day, I could talk and unwind with them. Even if I had to go work on a paper, I could just take that 20 minutes maybe in the kitchen and just feel 10 times better after a long day. And then also being in residence gave me the flexibility to put my all into campus life and put my all into everything that I want to do. I love being involved on campus, and not having to worry about transportation or even cooking with the dining hall. That just gave me the freedom to put more energy into things that I wanted to and the things that made me happier and made me feel like I was enjoying my university experience to the fullest.
Thank you, Elise. And that's a perfect segue into the benefits I would like to kind of identify of living in residence. The first being the convenience of it. Residence, you pay your fee, and it's all inclusive living. So that's your rent, that is your meal plan, your laundry, everything's included in the price of your residence fees. You don't have to worry if you live in an apartment about paying your electric bill, about going to get groceries. It makes it a very easy transition especially if you're coming from a different country. One of the other great benefits of living in residence is actually peer review studies have mentioned about how living in residence actually adds to retention and persistence into further years. So there's a clear positive impact on a student's GPA, and students who live in residence tend to do better in school in their classes than students who do not live in residence. And that has a lot to do with the different benefits that we're going to talk about today, and the easier transition that students will have if they live in residence. And speaking to that, with that transition, you have the independence of living on your own, but you still have that safety net. So as someone spoke earlier on the student panel, we have campus security. We have RAs living in residence. We have a residence coordinator living in residence. We have our wonderful residence supervisors. So while you do have a lot of independence when you live on campus, there are those people kind of in the background that will help you with that transition. And there's always someone there to offer advice, to have your back if you need it, because the transition from high school to university can be tricky. So it's nice to have those staff kind of looking at it for you as well. Safety and security. The STU campus, the UMB campus is very safe. As we said, we have campus security, and a lot of people around that just look out for each other. STU is very much a family, and we all kind of look out for each other here, and it's a very safe campus. So anybody who wants to come here should take some comfort in that. The residents in the campus community, particular to STU, we are a small school, so it's very easy to build those great friendships, those lifelong friendships. When you come here, especially if you live in residence, you're going to notice this very tight-knit community. Once again, people who look out for each other, who we help each other out, and some of the people you're going to meet in residence, maybe it's your roommate. Not everybody loves the idea of sharing a room with somebody their first year, but those are going to be lifelong friendships. My roommate my first year, I'm still friends with that person today. People I've met in residence, I was best man at their wedding. I'm a godfather to their children. Those friendships are invaluable. And living in residence for myself especially, can't speak for the others on the panel, but I was a bit of an introvert, a bit shy, and living in campus actually opened up a lot of doors for me, helped me come out of my shell, and it was a transformative experience for me personally. And our job is to try and make it as a transformative experience for you as well. Finally, the last point I want to make, I am obviously St. Thomas alumni, but other alumni have reported that living in residence is one of their best university memories. and I can definitely attest to that. So I'm going to pass it on to Jeremy, who's going to talk specifically about each individual residence.
Awesome, thank you, Corey. Yeah, Corey made a lot of compelling arguments about living in residence, and I think, you know, moving into that transitioning to the Stu community, you're already in a community. So let me first start off, I guess, talking about Harrington Hall. Harrington is, I loved living in Harrington so much. It had such a strong, vibrant community on campus. A lot of times you could tell Harrington had a very positive impact on the campus. Harrington has been recently renovated. If you have the opportunity to be on campus and walk through, it's very impressive, especially you know, from the time that I lived there, and it's very exciting that way. Harrington is going to be mixed gendered hallways. So we're moving to gender inclusivity. So where anybody can live in any of the wings. There are designated spaces within the residence building itself as study spaces. So if you're worried about conflicting with your roommate and their study schedule, or you know, if you like to stay up late to study and they like to go to bed early, you do have space within those lounges. There are also social lounges throughout the building, and the building is accessible. The first floor is designed to be an accessible building that way. What else can I say about Harrington? Oh, Harrington is located right in the heart of campus, on the right beside George Martin Hall. So if you were on the student panel earlier, you heard Jason say it's a quick walk out of the front door right into the dining hall. Yeah, so I think next I'm going to talk about Holy Cross House. Holy Cross House is the only all-female residence on campus now. I don't want to talk too much about back in my day, but back in my day, it was there were mixed wings, so I had the opportunity to live in Holy Cross House as well, and it's I love Holy Cross because it is a smaller house, and because of that, it's such a tight community, and it's really, really easy to build very strong, good connections. Even now, when I have the opportunity to visit in my role as a resident supervisor, I walk past the kitchen, and there are always residents in there socializing, watching movies, making food. So it's a really strong community there. There are four wings in Holy Cross. It's a unique building because it's also the only residence that houses academic classrooms as well. So the residence is actually on the sides of the buildings, with the center being an academic space. So it's really, really convenient if you have class in that building because you can go in your slippers, which is always fun to do. What else? Their bathrooms in Holy Cross as well are shared. So there's typically lots of space in there though. And right beside Holy Cross is a parking lot as well. So if you have a car, students are welcome to park there. And then finally, our third house is Vanier Hall. Vanier Hall just went through a major renovation. So since the renovation, we've only been open for a year, and it's absolutely beautiful inside. It's very high quality. There Vanier and Harrington are very similar in that most of the rooms are are double rooms. There are a few single rooms scattered throughout the building, but typically you will have a roommate. In Vanier, it is all gender inclusive. So again, anybody can live anywhere. Each wing has shared bathrooms, which have multi-stalls, and they're very private as well. There are also single stall washrooms as well. So if you do need, or if you want some extra privacy, there are washrooms like that as well. Each floor has a common space and a lounge. And Vanier is located on the other side of George Martin. So across on the other side from Harrington. So it's Harrington, George Martin, Vanier. They're all very close. And there are study spaces throughout the building as well. And we're right beside the parking lot. So you can, again, if you do require parking, it's right there. I think I could talk about these residence buildings all day if you would let me. But I guess to sum up, they're all very unique. And I think, you know, talking with residents who live in each building, they love their building, and there's a strong community. So yeah, I guess I'm gonna hand it over to Selena, who is gonna be talking about how to pick which building you're gonna live in.
Thank you, Jeremy. So yeah, I will touch a little bit on completing your residence reservation. So the first things first, once you get accepted to STU, you can reserve your space in residence approximately 2 days after. So 2 days after your acceptance. Now, to complete a reservation, you would click on the Next Steps tab on your applicant portal and follow the instructions. So ensure that you know your STU credentials. So that would be your STU email and your password, which you would find at the bottom of the Next Steps page. So if you just scroll to the bottom, that's where you find your credentials. Your STU credentials should be used to log into our eResLife portal. So that is where you would complete your residence preferences. So once submitted, you will receive an email confirmation. So please keep in mind that you can always go back in and make changes to your residence preferences after submission. However, that will change your submission date. So for example, if you submitted your residence reservation last year, November 1st, 2022, and decided to make changes today, then that would be your new submission date, which would be today's date, February 18th, 2023. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Also, there is no deadline to reserve your residence space. However, in order to have a guaranteed space, you would need to submit those residence preferences by April 15th. So another thing, after submitting your residence preferences, your next steps would be to keep an eye on your email. So in May, you do have the opportunity of selecting your rooms. Essentially, you'd be given time slots for the room selection, but I won't touch on that today because more information will be provided at a later date, and we'll also have another webinar that gets into detail about selecting rooms. So once you select your rooms in May, then you'll have 10 business days or 2 weeks after the selection to pay a non-refundable residence confirmation fee of $300. So this confirmation fee essentially secures your space in residence. And the amount is later applied to your student account. Also, for students who are not able to select their rooms in May, you don't have to worry because our office does manual room placements. So, you will notice once you start completing your residence preferences in ERES that there are a few questions that do ask you about your living preferences. So when filling out that section, ensure that you're being very honest with yourself. So for example, if you know that, if you know who you would like to room with, then just make sure you have a very honest conversation with that person as well about living expectations. So we want you to be vulnerable with the person, have those difficult conversations with each other because you're going to be living with that person for 8 months, right? And also for the people that, they don't have someone that they know offhand that they would like to room with, then just make sure that on your residence reservation that you're also being very honest when filling out the living and learning preferences, because that's what we use to pair students together as roommates. So we do try our best to match you with the, the suitable person. So yeah, just make sure that you're being honest on the residence preferences. And just some key things to think about. Fall 2023 fees will be released in May. Also for your residence fees, the first half is due mid-September, and then the other half would be due end of semester. I mean, if you do want to pay everything in full in September, you're also able to do that. And then finally, please keep an eye for upcoming webinars. So choosing your room and roommate. So that is where you may have a lot of questions about, oh my God, how do I go in and choose my room? Don't worry, we'll have another webinar that will get into details about how you can go ahead and choose your roommates. But yeah, that is all from me. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you folks so much. I think you really answered a lot of the questions that we'd actually received in the earlier session that I know you guys were probably listening in on. So the first question that I have right now is directed to Selena. So where and how can I apply for single room? So I know you mentioned there's going to be a webinar that's going to follow and all that. But I just for a student wondering right now, like where and how can they apply for single room?
Thank you, Michelita. So when you're completing your residence preferences, you do have the option of, kind of ranking. So first of all, the residence building that you want to be in, as well as the type of room that you want. So for example, you're able to say, you want Holy Cross, then Harrington, then Vanier. And then another question, you can put that, you want a single room as your top choice, and then a double room. Now, we do encourage students, single rooms are not guaranteed as we don't have that many single rooms. So you're able to put your preferences, but it's not guaranteed. But we do encourage you to live in a double room. It's fun, like Corey mentioned about the benefits. You're able to meet people and form lifelong relationships with your roommates. So yeah.
Thank you. And I can attest to that as someone who lived in residence for 4 years of my degree. And my roommate in first year, I remember, she was from the United States and her family literally adopted me. So I definitely, speak to that in terms of like making friends with your roommates. But I had another question again for you, Selena. So when and how will students learn which building they're living in?
Thank you. So that will all happen in May. So once you get to, you'll have the opportunity to select your rooms in May. So basically, if you're selecting a room in Vanier Hall, you do that in May. However, for the students, once again, who say you apply after the whole room selection process is done, not to worry, we will manually place you, once you submit your residence preferences, and then we usually send you an email letting you know what building you're going to be in. But for the majority of, first year students, it happens in May.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So we do have another question from a student. And again, I think this is for you. So what happens with residence applications if you're accepted into STU after graduation in June? So if this person is accepted after graduating in June, would they still be able to apply for residence then?
Oh, absolutely. So we do welcome you all. So you will still have an opportunity to apply. So that April 15th deadline is basically just to guarantee you a space. However, if you apply in June, yeah, we welcome your applications and we will just work with you and ensure that, you get us a space in residence. So there's no actual deadline. So yeah, you'll still have an opportunity to submit your residence preferences.
Perfect. Thank you. I have a question, not for you, Selena. This one is for you, Elise. So I guess as an international student, coming from a different community, there are a lot of domestic students as well that come maybe from an hour away. I'm just wondering how the support was like in your first year. So right as you got on campus in your first year, like how was the support that you received in residence?
Well, my arrival was slightly stressful because of flight issues. So I actually arrived, I think, the opening day of Welcome Week. And I was really, really frazzled because of that. And I remember I I also got dropped off at the wrong part of campus, so I had to carry my suitcases all the way through campus, and that was very fun. So I arrived to Holy Cross House, and the RC at the time of Holy Cross welcomed me in. She kind of gave me a rundown of what was going on. I mean, it was a busy time for her as well, so I really appreciated that she took the time to kind of let me know what was going on, what I should do next. She was pointing me towards the dining hall. She was like, "You should eat. It's gonna be a long night." We had chair off and everything. So even though I was a bit lost and a bit disoriented, as soon as I arrived, I got that kind of support in terms of, "I'm here for you. Let me know if you have questions. Here's some directions that you at least know what to do next. You don't feel too overwhelmed." And then I would say over the course of the next few months of adjusting, I had a lot of people checking on me to ask how I was doing in terms of resident staff. That would be the residence advisors and the residence coordinator. I was in the same wing as the RC, which was different, and she actually was checking in on a lot of us, and then the people around, my neighbors, especially upper year students, were looking out for me. There were other upper year international students they knew the struggle of arriving to residence and not really knowing what to get, and there were people that gave me a lot of advice, pointed me how to use the bus and what to buy, I guess, from different places. And it was really, there's a lot of support, especially during Welcome Week when it's a huge adjustment because you are now settling down. There were a lot of wing meetings, house meetings in Holy Cross that kind of blends together because it's a small house, so you get a lot of different interactions with different people in different wings. And so there was a lot of information that was given, and I never felt like I didn't have a place to go if I was lost. And at the same time, there was enough interaction that I felt like I was not alone. And especially because my roommate hadn't arrived yet, it was a bit difficult, I think, doing that all by myself. But then I didn't have to, because then there were people, not just in residence as well. There was also support from Stuisa and friends on campus.
Thank you so much, Elise. Your experience sounds exactly like mine. I was actually a residence advisor myself in my second year, and I can tell you these are upper year students that are trained to live in residence. So, it's kind of like your own built-in brother and sister in residence, if you will, which is incredible. But folks, like we mentioned earlier, they're going to be having a lot of webinars to help you in terms of applying. I know we threw a lot of information at you, but fear not, we have a lot of webinars coming in before April 15th. So you'll be able to actually reach out to us and receive support. But with that said, thank you guys so much for joining our panel today. It was really insightful, and I know students really appreciate hearing from you. And with that said, I will pass it on back to Christy.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Muchinetta, and many thanks to our Residence Life team. One of the best things about Residence, and there are so many, is the proximity not only to classes that it offers you, but also the proximity to the variety of services that suddenly are going to be available to you as a St. Thomas University student.